Hello and welcome to my Christian fiction podcast, where I share my stories with you. Right now, you're listening to Tangled Web, written and read by Eunice Wilkie. Chapter 5. Wednesday, the 29th of April 2020, continued. Amanda watched the plain-clothed detective walk away and sent a frantic WhatsApp message. Then she grabbed her jacket from a peg by the back door and, with a whispered apology to Pharaoh, quietly left the house. Through a gap in the thick foliage on her boundary, she could glimpse the police officer chatting to Bob and Kath and faintly hear voices. Hopefully they would be there a while. With any luck, Kath wouldn't observe her. Bordering the field where the three neighbours met was an ancient pine forest named Hangman's Wood. It encroached into Kath and Bob's view and was only a short distance away from Amanda's back door. Amanda picked her way through the wood until she was well concealed by the close-packed firs and pines. It was dry underfoot. Very little moisture penetrated the evergreen umbrella which encased the forest. Once you were below the treetops, it was perpetually shaded. Only in small patches, green moss and sturdy woodland fauna grasped snatches of filtered light and survived in the shadowed terrain. Amanda slumped against the base of a thick pine trunk, leaning her head against the rough bark and shutting her eyes. Tanya was dead. Terry must have killed Tanya. Could there be any other explanation? Was it only the beginning of the year that she had been so happy with Terry? After a messy divorce and subsequent broken relationships, he had seemed the final answer, and the last chance. He didn't say much about himself. With hindsight, she realized how little she knew about him. But men were like that, weren't they? Tall, dark, passably handsome in a rough and ready kind of way, he had seemed keen enough on her, while it lasted. Lending him £5,000, the bulk of her meagre savings, had seemed the obvious thing to do at the time. She had ignored the nagging doubts about where he went, how he lived, and what he was doing when he wasn't with her. How had it come to this? Around the time she and Terry broke up in February, she met Lizette. Lizette and her other half, Ken, had just moved to rented accommodation in Tor. Lizette was full of advice and comfort. She was exactly the right friend for those hard times. It was she who had first alerted Amanda to Terry's other women. Through her, Amanda discovered his affair with Tanya Fletcher. Lizette seemed to know so much about Terry that Amanda wondered whether she'd also had an affair with him. Was it because of Terry that Lizette had moved to the area? Amanda always felt a bit like a puppet on a string so far as Lizette was concerned. She must dance to Lizette's tune, and so long as everything went Lizette's way, all was well. Then, the first time Amanda had used her own initiative, by taking Terry's briefcase of money, their entire friendship had soured. But much as she was ambivalent about Lizette, she was the only person Amanda could turn to now. Everything had changed. Tanya was dead. Had Terry suspected her of taking the money? Would she or Lizette be next? Lizette's home was on the other side of the wood from Amanda's. Amanda watched her picking her way through the trees, as usual attired in expensive country brands, looking effortlessly right. That was like Liz. Appropriate for every occasion. She was the kind of person you would want at the most awkward family gathering. She seemed to have the uncanny ability to be whatever you most needed in the moment. But the more Amanda had seen of her, the less she felt she knew her. What was the real Lizette like? As soon as she was close enough, Amanda blurted out the news about Tanya, instantly annoyed that Lizette didn't seem particularly surprised or empathetically panicked either. "Did you already know about this?" demanded Amanda. "No, of course not. I didn't really know Tanya, of course, but I don't think Terry and the money have anything to do with her death. How could they?" She made it sound ludicrous, made Amanda feel stupid. "Come on," snapped Amanda. "You know what Terry's like. He must be mixed up in all sorts to have that much cash in a briefcase. If he thinks Tanya took his money, he probably killed her for it." Lizette didn't even attempt to hide her impatience. "You can't jump to that conclusion. You said yourself that Terry never mentioned the money to you. In fact, he borrowed money from you. I doubt he mentioned his case of banknotes to anyone else, including Tanya." Amanda's voice became shrill. "Tanya's dead. What kills a healthy woman like her? She's younger than me. It must be that he found out about the money and he thinks it was her." Lizette kicked a pine cone across the dry forest floor. "Stop. You'll only give yourself a migraine worrying about it, and then you won't be good for anything." Lizette sounded anything but sympathetic with a potential migraine. "You must keep calm about this. I don't think Tanya's death has got anything to do with him. If Terry visits the cottage on Fridays, he probably doesn't even know his precious case is missing yet." Amanda massaged her forehead as if a migraine wasn't far away. "That's all very well for you. You didn't take the case." Lizette forbore to go back over old ground. She admitted, to herself at least, that she had vastly underestimated Amanda. Her desire for revenge against Terry, her need to recover the £5,000 she was owed, her surprising courage and resourcefulness in snatching a sudden opportunity. Incredibly, it seemed that Amanda had not only been watching Terry's Friday afternoon jaunts to Molly Johnson's cottage far more closely than Lizette realized, but she had actively prepared to intervene. Knowing that Terry's main interest lay in a padlocked shed, Amanda had searched "How to Crack a Combination Lock" on YouTube and watched several videos. Perhaps even more surprisingly, it had worked. Finding and removing the silver aluminium briefcase from the shed had, according to Amanda, been spur of the moment. She claimed she had no idea what it contained. In fact, she was pretty sure it couldn't be money because it was so heavy. She simply thought that taking it would hurt, or at the very least inconvenience, Terry. Lizette had come upon Amanda with the briefcase shortly after she had removed it from Terry's hiding place. Amanda was talking to Kath Geddes in the field behind their houses, asking her to watch it for a night or two, along with a far-fetched explanation why she needed her to do this. Before Lizette could intervene and suggest she took the case for safekeeping, the deed was done. Kath, older but toned and muscled through constant workouts, had hoisted at least 15 kilos of case through her garden gate and whisked it out of sight. "Why didn't you ask me?" Lizette had asked the question, and Amanda had explained that she had intended asking Liz to hide the case, but Terry knew Liz, didn't he? She didn't want to put her friend in any danger. Lizette was definitely not convinced by this explanation. Ever since, she was not the sensitive friend she had been. Suddenly, Amanda said abruptly, "We should put the case back. It's not worth the risk. You know what he's like. And if you're right and he doesn't know it's missing yet, he'll never know anything about it." Lizette was staring at the dry forest floor. Slowly, her foot moved in a circle, shifting pine needles and dirt with the toe of her dewberry boots. "Yes, perhaps we should," she conceded. "We can talk to Kath tonight." She wasn't sure how she had become part of the "we" in Amanda's plan, which had been so spontaneously and exclusively solo. But it suited her plans to keep Amanda close. Because of Terry. It was, after all, the reason she had befriended her to start with. Kath couldn't remember how their evening meetings in the field behind their houses had started. They became established with the COVID lockdown, perhaps because Amanda and Lizette were now working from home and needed to escape at the end of the day. She had enjoyed the evening chats, until now. What had she got herself into? She hardly knew these women, and suddenly she felt like she was in the thick of a ridiculously far-fetched mystery. The other two were huddled by Amanda's fence, speaking in hushed tones, but seeming friendly enough as she approached. Could she trust them? The story about Molly, about whom Kath knew nothing, but that she had lived in a ramshackle cottage nearby and was elderly, was that Molly had asked Amanda to temporarily look after her life savings. This was because she didn't want her only relative, her good-for-nothing nephew, Terry something, to know anything about her money. Amanda had further convinced Kath that she and Lizette couldn't hide the briefcase themselves, as Terry knew they were Molly's friends and, if he suspected it existed, might come looking for it. The arrangement was only for a few days, while Terry visited. He was allegedly in a lockdown bubble with Molly. Then they could return the case. Now Molly was dead, and the shock of that unforeseen complication had somewhat worn off. The others were right. She was an old lady, well into her 80s. She could quite conceivably die at home without any cause for suspicion. Even the unexpected police presence in the area the previous evening, and the questions earlier that day, didn't seem like such a big deal now. The death of another local woman was coincidence, wasn't it? But if Molly's only next of kin, this nephew Terry, didn't know a case of money even existed, if they might be the only people who knew there was such an inheritance waiting to be claimed, why were Amanda and Lizette suddenly so twitchy about returning it? Or would they simply split it between the two of them once Kath had given it up? What should she do? She could imagine what Bob would say about it all, if he only knew. He wouldn't balk at it. If Bob knew about the alleged money hidden in their garage, he would contrive a cunning plan to exclude the other two. He would have no compunction how this was achieved, and keep it all. "I think keeping it might be a crime," said Amanda. She was sipping the odd tea she drank. The others had politely refused her offer of the nettle and cowslip brew. Kath retorted, "The only crime is that the government would tax it all away." She didn't count irregularities with Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs as wrongdoing. "I don't mind taking it back to the cottage," said Lizette. She was trying to stop Monty leaping Amanda's fence and reaching small Pharaoh. "Monty! Here, boy!" Kath eyed Lizette suspiciously. While lugging the heavy, locked briefcase through the tangle of hangman's wood, and the remaining distance to Molly's cottage was a thankless task, it wasn't if you kept all the money. And, judging by the weight of the case, there must be a considerable amount inside. Kath listened and let the others discuss and dictate. She had serious doubts about their explanation of the whole affair. She began to wonder about them, about how two such different women came to be friends. And if not friends, what were they? Business associates running some kind of illegal scam? Were other hapless residents in the Strath caretaking other locked briefcases for them? Oddly enough, unsuspecting Bob made the decision for that evening. He came into the back garden calling for Kath. "Someone on the phone, love," he said. Whatever the reason, Kath was glad to escape. It gave her one more night to decide what to do. She heard one of them call something about tomorrow night. She waved her hand. She wasn't promising anything. Yes, they might have taken Molly Johnson's money for safekeeping. But now Molly was dead, and the cash was stored in her garage.